Verse 1. If one be found slain in the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee to possess it, lying in the field, and it be not known who hath slain him, then thy elders and thy judges shall come forth, and they shall measure unto the cities which are round about him that is slain. Now this is them, though there's no possibility really of them ever finding out who murdered this man. So what do? Should they leave the land unclean and defiled? No, there's a provision for this. And it shall be that the city which is next unto the slain man, even the elders of that city, shall take a heifer, which hath not been wrought with, and which hath not drawn in the yoke. And the elders of that city shall bring down the heifer into a rough valley, which is neither eared nor sown, and shall strike off the heifer's neck there in the valley. Now what that strike off means is break its neck. This is not a sacrifice, a formal sacrifice, as in the shedding of blood to be required, like in a sin offering or anything. So they would kill this heifer. Pulpit commented at this point, strike off the heifer's neck there in the valley, rather break the heifer's neck, as this was not an act of sacrifice for which the shedding of blood would have been required, but simply a symbolical representation of the infliction of death on the undiscovered murderer. So this heifer is to represent the murderer, and because they can't inflict capital punishment upon him, which would cleanse the land and bring justice, this heifer has to die in his place. Verse 5, and the priests, the sons of Levi, shall come near, for them the Lord thy God hath chosen to minister unto him, and to bless in the name of the Lord, and by their word shall every controversy and every stroke be tried. And all the elders of that city, that are next unto the slain man, shall wash their hands over the heifer that is beheaded in the valley. And this was to proclaim their innocence. They said, we are not guilty of this. And the washing of hands to say that you are innocent of the blood spilled. We see that also with Pontius Pilate. Later on with Christ, he says, I wash my hands of this man. And they shall answer and say, our hands have not shed this blood, neither have our eyes seen it. Be merciful, O Lord, unto thy people Israel, whom thou hast redeemed, and lay not innocent blood upon thy people of Israel's charge, and the blood shall be forgiven them. So shalt thou put away the guilt of innocent blood from among you, when thou shalt do that which is right in the sight of the Lord. When thou goest forth to war against thine enemies, and the Lord thy God hath delivered them into thine hands, and thou hast taken them captive, and seest among the captives a beautiful woman. One of these captives is a lovely woman, and hast a desire unto her that thou wouldest have her to thy wife, then thou shalt bring her home to thine house, and she shall shave her head and pare her nails, and she shall put the raiment of her captivity from off her. And shall remain in thine house, and bewail her father and her mother a full month. And after that thou shalt go in unto her and be her husband, and she shall be thy wife. And it shall be, if thou have no delight in her, then thou shalt let her go whither she will. But thou shalt not sell her at all for money. Thou shalt not make merchandise of her, because thou hast humbled her. Thou shalt not make merchandise of her, we're told, if the man is displeased with her, for whatever reason. She may not like him. Who knows? She may not like living with him, so he just says, okay, well, fine, you can go. In essence, make gain of her, either by using her to thine own servile works, or by prostituting her to the lust or to the service of others. Philo of Alexandria, he made a really good comment right here. The wisdom and humanity of Moses, says Philo, are very remarkable in this law. Just pay attention to the details concerned in this, whereby the soldiers are forbidden to indulge a hasty and brutal passion, are kept a whole month in abstinence. Don't touch her for a whole month by law. Leave her to mourn. And thereby have an opportunity given them of knowing the temper and disposition of the woman. They'll get to know her during that time, at least to a certain degree, for whose misfortune and captivity a compassionate provision is made by allowing her so long a time of separation and mourning. I ask you, my friends, to find me any people from the ancient times in whom made such ordinances and put them in place for the captives, and whom were often just treated in the most barbaric sense. If a man have two wives, verse 15, if a man have two wives, one beloved and another hated, and they have borne him children, both of them, both the beloved and the hated, and the firstborn son be hers that was hated, then it shall be, when he maketh his sons to inherit that which he hath, that he may not make the son of the beloved firstborn before the son of the hated, which is indeed the firstborn. But he shall acknowledge the son of the hated for the firstborn, by giving him a double portion of all that he hath. For he is the beginning of his strength, the right of the firstborn is his. So the husband is not supposed to play favorites with the children just because he has more love for one of his wives. But my friends, really quickly, if all of this seems strange, very strange laws to be giving out, and you say, now wait a minute, why not just tell everybody to be perfect, live perfect, and stop doing this, take no captives and everything? Well, you have to be realistic in a fallen world. Okay, there are going to be captives. There are going to be some of the soldiers fall in love with some of the women. And just like with this new subject right here, and it's just like what Christ said in the New Testament. He says, Moses suffered you, meaning he allowed you to be divorced, but it was not so from the beginning. God's will for these people is to be absolutely perfect in everything. But given the situation that they're in, it's Moses being moved by the Holy Ghost, speaking to them on an earthly level, telling these former slaves about the best situation to make out of the culture and the times that they are in. If a man have a stubborn and rebellious son, which will not obey the voice of his father or the voice of his mother, and that when they have chastened him will not hearken unto them, then shall his father and his mother lay hold on him, and bring him out unto the elders of his city, and unto the gate of his place. And they shall say unto the elders of his city, This our son is stubborn and rebellious. He will not obey our voice. He is a glutton and a drunkard. And all the men of his city shall stone him with stones, that he die. So shalt thou put evil away from among you, and all Israel shall hear and fear. Notice this. That's a very important note right there. And all Israel, after this one instance has happened, then all of them will hear and fear. They'll all hear about what happened to this rebellious, even devilish son, in whom refused to be corrected, because it says after they have spent years chastising him and trying to bring him over to the right way of society, he still remains a glutton and a drunkard. So that tells us that this boy is actually probably in his mid-20s, early 30s or something like that. This isn't like a 10-year-old being killed. No, this is after many years of trying to bring him back around. But all of Israel shall hear and fear. And the purpose of so many of these ordinances was to set an example. It wasn't really intended that these things be done over and over and over again. It's that one example should be made, such as this, and then all the children would learn to respect their mother and father. That way they don't become like this. Now that subject is over. Now we move on to the next topic, and it's the final one of this 21st chapter. And if a man have committed a sin worthy of death, and he be to be put to death, and thou hang him on a tree, his body shall not remain all night upon the tree, but thou shalt in any wise bury him that day. For he that is hanged is accursed of God. That thy land be not defiled, here's the reason for them taking down his body and burying him, that thy land be not defiled, which the Lord thy God giveth thee for an inheritance. So just a few quick notes on this closing topic. There were 4 methods of execution in use among the ancient Jews: stoning, burning, the sword, and strangulation. The latter, strangulation, not named in Scripture, is regarded by the rabbis as the most common and the proper one to be adopted when no other is expressly enjoined by the law. Suspension, whether from cross, stake, or gallows, was not used as a mode of taking life. The crucifixion of Christ, that is not how the Jews executed. If you'll remember, Jesus says, now I'm going to be rendered over unto the Gentiles. That was the way the Romans did it. But was sometimes added after death as an enhancement of punishment. So after the person was killed in any of those 4 ways, after they were executed, they would put them up on this pole so that all people could see, and that would be the example, and it would sway the future criminal and put fear in him so that he wouldn't go about committing any type of future crime, because that could be him next. But what was the method of this? They fix a beam in the earth, according to John Gill. They fix a beam in the earth, and a piece of wood goes out of it, like over the top of it, and join his 2 hands together and hang him from that top part. That is, by his hand, not by his neck, as with us. But of course, my dear friends, this alludes to that of the sacrifice of Christ upon the tree. Paul himself wrote about this in Galatians 3 in the New Testament. Christ hath redeemed us from the curse of the law, because we're all sinners under the law, being made a curse for us. Because he was hanged upon the tree, he became a curse, and that was a curse taking our place, whereas we were cursed before that. For it is written, Cursed is every one that hangeth on a tree, that the blessing of Abraham might come on the Gentiles through Jesus Christ, that we might receive the promise of the Spirit through faith. So once again, just for clarification, faith and the law are being distinguished here. Because everyone under the law, everyone who tries to get to heaven by their own works, are cursed. Because if you break one of the 10 commandments, let's say, if you break even one of them, then you have broken all the law. You're just an outright damned sinner, meaning that you are cursed. But Christ, being hanged upon the tree, became a curse for us, because cursed is everyone that hangeth on a tree. So once again, the law condemned, but Christ took care of that, being cursed himself in our place. So then we go back before the law to Abraham, whom was called a friend of God through faith. So now it is all whom through faith go to heaven, because it is spiritual.